Hi, I'm Dorian, or Leviathan to my friends, and I'm an eldritch abomination lurking in the corners of your attic. I'm also an artist of the digital variety. Most of what I've learned through the years is self-taught, and one of the skills I've looked into a lot is the concept of rendering. If you're just as confused as I was when I first learned about this, look no further. I'm here to help. Also, as a reminder, any of the art that I show that I have created myself will be available in high-res PNG format for patrons from £1 or $1.50 and up over on patreon.com/LevandJackCreate, where my husband and I post all of our art before anybody on social media sees it. And you also get early access to my videos and your name in my videos. Rendering seems to be this nebulous concept that a lot of artists tend to put into their videos on TikTok, on Instagram, even on YouTube. It has this weight to it, like we're all supposed to know what it means and what it is, when I don't think anybody really knows, actually. I think quite literally. I've got the tism, and when I think of rendering, I think of painting. What I tend to see on my For You page when I look up rendering are painting tutorials. Now, because I kept seeing all of these painting tutorials rather than what rendering actually was, and nobody could tell me what it was, I did do some research and fell down quite a big rabbit hole. With just a Google search, I found that rendering is actually the process of making a 2D or 3D object more detailed within a computer program. And when you do Google these things, you're going to find that rendering is really only applied to being used within a 3D program that you'll use for making assets for video games or movies that have a 3D quality, 3D animation, that kind of thing. Those 3D programs that use rendering are like Maya, Blender, that kind of a thing. Their rendering process is creating something within the program and then exporting it. That is literally a render, the final render, going from an amorphous gray blob or circle to a potion bottle or a cow or an anime girl. Obviously, as a digital artist that does illustrations or makes cute little stickers within Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint and Procreate, things like that, you're not really going to be doing the 3D rendering process. You might include it or look into the skills to become a 3D artist, but by and large, a digital artist that is using Procreate or CSP is not going to be rendering a 3D object. Rendering within a art program that isn't part of the 3D circuit tends to be a little harder to explain, which is rather unfortunate, especially because we see all of these art tutorials on the internet that treat painting like rendering. And I do want to say that painting is a style of rendering. It doesn't have to be the only style, and it isn't. I do find that most of the time when I look up rendering tutorials on Instagram or TikTok or even YouTube, all of them skew towards painting. I do think that is just because a lot of people do use the painting process or the lineless process within their work, and that's totally fine. That's absolutely acceptable. I think the reason why painting has somehow become analogous or synonymous with rendering is because painting is one of the most difficult styles to understand. It comes with a lot of technical work and a lot of skill that needs to be built up over the years. Not that other styles don't also need this, but painting, in my opinion, is really, really hard to understand, which is probably why it comes up more often. Outside of painting, though, which again is a style of rendering, you could take a look at all of the people that are recreating like Leyendecker paintings for master studies within a digital art program, and that would be rendering. But you'll take a look at the concept art for Dragon Age and Mass Effect, where it looks either photo bashed in certain areas or painted in certain areas. And then there are concept art examples from Matt Rhodes that are very cell shaded. That is also a type of rendering. If you're not in the video game concept art scene, here are some other examples of what would be rendering without painting, or what we would see as traditional painting. ML Arty, who, for instance, is a big influence on my art at the moment, has a lot of line work still in their art, but it also doesn't really have a painted quality, and somehow yet it does. There's also Amanda R. Otten, or Amanda Rotten, Claire Hummel, or at Shumla, who has done concept art for BioShock, Half-Life. She also doesn't really have a painting rendering style. A lot of her work was more of a line art based sort of a thing. All that to say, rendering really is just a way for artists to get their pieces from point A to point B and finished. It doesn't matter what way you do it. Basically, the final exported PNG, JPEG, whatever is a render because you are using a digital art program. The reason why we call it rendering is that we took a word from the earliest versions of these digital art programs like Photoshop, which were meant for graphic design or photography, and when you would export it, it would be called rendering. And because we were creating illustrations rather than photography, we were still doing the process of rendering, but creating something different within that program. You don't need to render in a, what I would say, a traditional sense. You don't even really need to, quote unquote, render it at all. Whatever you're doing in your programs is rendering. You don't have to go looking online for all of these tutorials and think that you need to paint like Leyendecker or produce large-scale concept art pieces like Matt Rhodes or Shumla. You don't need to do that. All you need to do is find your sense of style and what you like doing, and that is your render. And of course, by all means, if you want to go out there and figure out how to paint or render how you would do like a traditional oil painting, do it. Absolutely, 100%. I believe in you. If you figure out how to do that, let me know how you did it, because I could never figure out how to paint. Thanks for sticking through that. Hopefully that helped you out. Rendering is a really, really tricky subject, but remember, you're probably already doing it just by using a 3D or 2D art program. Special thank you to the Coffee Rain, Meg, Anon B, Peach and Milk, Will, Nairoos, Court, Ghost, Hatter and Holmes, Isabella Redeemer of Bad Himbos, Robin, Royal Rat, Vicarian's Babe, Mushroomy Tass, Wick, Delphinian Drow, Little Starlight, Impossible Rat Babies, Jordan TM, Estrella, Worcestershire Sauce, Pally Punk, Fluffy Bunny Bottoms, Austin, Night Margie, Team Talltail, Bunny, Lux Coffin, CJ, Harley, Silas, Sunny, and Latiners.